That's a good one. Demons in hell are VTubers. Alright class, settle down and let me tell you a story. I know my absence has been noticed, but for everyone out there, I got a new job and I got a new place. And I have to tell you guys, it's been quite a struggle since I had to juggle moving in to the new place and adjusting to the new job. I mean, the contractor messed up in fixing the sink. The agent that was supposed to get me my parking space messed up the contract with a typo. Electric line blew up and cut off my internet connection. In other words, it's been one slog after another. But I promise you guys, I am doing everything I can to bring up a new schedule where we can see each other at least twice a week for starters. But for now, as they say, man make plans and God laughs. And well, we found something interesting in the Trench Crusade universe about where exactly is God in their world. But before we begin our search, please like, share, subscribe, do the whole notification button thing to help me out with the algo. Because my real dream is to be an internet goober and hang out with you guys all day. That's it, that's the dream. And here we go. I found the whole thing quite fascinating because ever since we began our tabletop journey with Warhammer 40k, one of the most fascinating aspects of their lore, or at least in their universe, is that these spiritual beings, unlike in the real world, how here in their particular universe, in their world, they are perceived as actual tangible beings and not just an abstract concept as compared to ours, where you can literally walk up to them and touch them. So, in this case, did the creators place God in the physical realm in the Trench Crusade universe? Can you actually go up, talk to him, and touch him? Or is it completely something else? Anyways, it should be fascinating, so let's go.
Howdy folks, it is Scanner here. This video I'm going to
Hi.
talk about one of the more sizable Trench Crusade mysteries, I want to say, which is where is God in Trench Crusade? One of the questions that will regularly come up when... Now, this happens with two main types of people, basically. People who don't have a huge exposure to Trench Crusade are always kind of curious why God isn't intervening and why isn't he helping. And then people who have thought a lot about Trench Crusade are...
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, don't they have like units that can directly communicate with Jesus Christ or God? I mean, there is the reincarnation of the Meta Christ, which we will explore, by the way, as we move on.
Often wondering why isn't God intervening and why isn't he helping? So I want to do that. Now, this is an interesting one because for these Trench Crusade mysteries, I can lean a couple of different ways depending on what it is that I'm talking about. But overall, when I'm talking about Trench Crusade and when I'm discussing the game in general, I try to treat it as a game and as art and as a product and as all the things that it really is. Not just one thing. I don't try and just treat it as a simple story and then I can just say or do whatever I want. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about why God is the way he is in Trench Crusade, and there's a lot of reasons.
This is going to be a slippery slope in a sense that Scannerbarkly is basing this video off of his own interpretation and of the developer's, well, interpretation of the whole thing. So it's just one layer after another. But you know what? We'll see. It might be something.
For that. So to get right down to it, it's a pretty evident part of the fact that the world of Trench Crusade needs to allow for the actual game of Trench Crusade. And you can't just have a bunch of holy elements that like wipe the board, basically. That's one of the sticking points that people will regularly run into. A lot of the time, it's a sticking point that critics of Trench Crusade will run into. Somehow, Trench Crusade is not supposed to be a game. It's not supposed to be a product. And because it has a religious theme, they don't treat it the way that they would anything else. And it's something that they will regularly kind of run into. They perceive it as undermining God somehow. I don't really know how. I've never had anybody offer a reasonable explanation for why it does that.
Um, I think we tackled this in a previous video before about my personal take on the whole Trench Crusade thing about mutilating children and stuff. But here's the thing, right? As a person who actually prays, or as a person who considers himself to be deeply religious, um I don't think much of it at all. I mean, it's a story. It's an artistic interpretation of religion. I see it as a separate thing. I don't see it as, undermining religion. It just so happens to be an artistic interpretation of religion. I mean, it's like, in the internet, you're gonna see some things that you don't like. Despite the fact that, of course, for a deeply religious as a deeply religious person, it's like just like myself, this whole thing is gonna go off as blasphemous. And but for me, that's the whole thing. It's nothing but an artistic interpretation of a story. That's it. I mean, where else are we supposed to go? I mean, it's like the internet. You're definitely going to see things that you don't like. But guess what? The world isn't a sounding board. I mean, do safe spaces exist? Yes, they do. But you know that the rest of the world isn't. So just, take it as you can. And if you don't like it, stay away from it. That's it. That's all. That's my advice for the whole thing. Since I know for a fact that some of my fellow tabletop players are definitely also religious. I mean, if you don't like it, then don't play it. Stay away from it. That's all I can say for the whole thing. But for me, I find this whole philosophical take on this story for this particular game, for the lore for this particular game, quite interesting. Because it just so happens that for me, the inspiration for this particular game happens to be the Bible. That's it. For example, Warhammer 40K. The whole thing is so derivative of a bunch of stories. I mean, just mix it up with Dune. And you know what? 1,000 other novels. John Steakley's Armor, Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein. The whole thing's quite derivative. Everything's quite derivative. And for me, this whole thing is simply literally just a derivative of stories from the Bible. That's it. They just happen to use the Bible as an inspiration. I don't think it undermines anything. It just so happens that it decided to create a story, or the developers decided to create a story that is, well, inspired by the Bible. Again, if you're a deeply religious person just like me and you think this whole thing is blasphemous, or um just downright undermining your religion, then stay away from it. It's not gonna do anything to you. I promise you. I don't think God needs our help in spreading His glory, or in glorifying His name. Let's all just stay cool. This is philosophy, all right. No right or wrong answers. The ones with the best argument and the best oratory skills usually wins. I mean, that's why it's called philosophy.
But ultimately, that's the problem that a lot of people run into, is that the world of Trench Crusade, the story of Trench Crusade, the state, as it were, of Trench Crusade must also allow for the actual game of Trench Crusade. It's super easy to just sit there and like poke holes
Yeah, it
in
is.
just about everything. But if you sit back and relax and understand that the main goal of entertainment is to entertain, it becomes a lot easier to kind of deal with and approach. So the central premise of Trench
See, the main goal of entertainment is to entertain, and it just so happens that a lot of people are into the whole grim dark stuff.
Crusade is that the Abrahamic religions appear to be, in some way, if not in all ways, truthful, in that there is a creator that we can consider to be God, and he does, in many ways, line up with the complex web of beliefs that the various Abrahamic religions have. Now, that in and of itself is difficult enough to do. Ultimately, Abrahamic religions kind of river back to the same source, but they will disagree on all kinds of things. So far, the developers have shown a willingness to pull various elements.
See, they will disagree on a lot of things. It's all about an interpretation of one particular story. I mean, if you look at the Catholic Church, you've got the Franciscans, Dominicans. Wait, what are the others? 4 of them. Franciscans, Dominicans. Can someone please put in the other 2? The Jesuits, and then what's the last one? Franciscans, Dominicans, Jesuits. Can someone please put it down in the comments? Thank you. Oops, my bad. There we go.
Of different beliefs who create their own structure and mechanisms. A good example of that is the mechanism by which creation appears to have occurred, which is essentially Kabbalah, and by which small elements of hell and heaven operate to help obfuscate things a little bit. The monsters that make it to Earth, they're not like real demons, as it were, and you can't have angels due to their nuke powers.
If I'm not mistaken, they're some sort of half-breed that actually make it to Earth or something. We're gonna have to re-review the whole thing.
These are just things that have been established. Ultimately, the biggest narrative mechanic introduced to the world of Trench Crusade is the one that explains why it is the way it is, which is first the nature of hell, and then second, the Covenant as it has come to be known. For the uninitiated, hell is not exactly home to the best and brightest in the Trench Crusade universe, nor in our own. It's not exactly a place filled with creatures that are able to overcome their baser natures. In my notes, I have literally written this: the denizens of hell are very much like YouTubers. They are self-centered, petty, stupid, and completely unable to overcome the flaws that damn them to their meager existence. Any forward movement.
All right, that's quite an interpretation, but here presently, and most people's interpretation of hell, it's usually based on Dante Alighieri's what was that? What was the name of that? Oh my god, that's a good one. Demons in hell or VTubers? No, not VTubers, YouTubers. You know what? That's a good one. Demons are YouTubers. They're petty, self-centered, and trying to one-up each other or something. But anyways, hold up. Let me just back it up. Hold on, Dante Alighieri. Alighieri. Wait, what was that? Yes, Inferno, Dante Alighieri's Inferno. Right, almost all of our visions of hell, or almost all of our interpretations of hell, the modern interpretation of hell comes from Dante Alighieri's Inferno. In almost every movie that we see, it's all about Dante's Inferno. Although I've always wondered what he thinks, what these philosophical luminaries will think of YouTubers now and influencers now.
Momentum that happens for them occurs only within the weird confines of their own malign existence, and they don't seem to value anyone or anything other than their own station in a society that only has any real value by the consensus of those trapped within. So
I mean, in the 40k, the interpretation of why and how chaos hasn't taken over yet, just like orcs and, you know, the others, is that they're too, just like human beings, they're too busy fighting amongst themselves that the Imperium of Man will be screwed if only they could get their shit together and stop fighting for just like, you know, a minute and, you know, just band together and destroy the Imperium. Same interpretation here.
That's essentially how hell works. In Trench Crusade, they will do anything, say anything, and destroy anyone that they need to in order to get ahead. There's no grand or unified plan on the part of hell. There's just an endless sea of infighting demons and damned humans who endlessly undermine each other.
That's
the nature of hell. That's why they struggle to make any real, what we would consider to be progress in their war. So, the Covenant. The Covenant essentially boils down to a simple rule, which is if a true demon, a true demonic entity, shows up on Earth, an angel or elements of the heavenly, I guess, will appear to deal with it. That somewhat binds the hands of hell, as they can only send through their weird blend of people and animals and baser elements
They're quote
with
unquote half
small
breeds.
sparks of, like, you know, the damned and the demonic in them. But that means they're pretty consistently reliant on their weaker element to get the job done. Once again, this is to explain away the state of the world. If as a game, if you just allowed hell to march, unencumbered through the gates, it's over. If you allow heaven to directly intervene, it's over. Things need to be a certain way in order for a game world to actually exist. And the strongest thing that we know that can go through the gates appears to be the hegemon. And at least at this point in time, the heavy lifting of the leadership of hell is often done by, like, fallen humans and things of that nature who have risen sometimes over the course of centuries or millennia through the ranks of hell. I often find it easier to think about this kind of stuff when I break it down to systems. Hegemon are
So
akin.
there's a covenant that, if you send it through demon, heaven will send it through angel, and in order to keep the balance. Interesting.
To functions, basically. They're created from an endless iteration and a strengthening of particular strains of the Black Grail, and combined with the belief of all the elements within that strain. So every thrall and every plague knight, etc., they all give the hegemon power by believing in it. And as they are all bestial and human in origin, the hegemon itself is essentially the same and can get through the gates without a angel showing up and fucking nuking everything.
Interesting.
So what we know of Beelzebub and the so far lack of hegemons from any other origins, this could be a clever workaround of his to spite God, where he is the one who has came up with this way to get super powerful things through the gate without actually breaching the covenant. Do I know that for sure? No, I don't, but that's what these videos are about. Speculation. So the reason that this system is so important is because of one question that I get asked a lot in my comment section, as I mentioned earlier, which is why God doesn't just stop hell. Why doesn't God just intervene? That's a much bigger question for another time, but essentially it boils down to whether you...
That question at why doesn't just God intervene is quite a heavy question, and not just this particular game, but in real life. You know what? Personally, as one that has been through the slog of academe, that has actually talked to these philosophy majors, to these philosophy postgrad, is that, well, it's my answer. Same as Olenna Tyrell when he was talking to the spider. It's one for the philosophers. You can't provide a definite answer based on something that is, well, rooted in faith. Because in real life, there's so much shit. And this answer is basically just one for the philosophers. And I doubt Scanner has the philosophical capacity to actually answer this. No one can, because every time the existence of God is come into question, as far as we know, the debate ends with whoever is the best orator or whoever is the better orator to, well, quote unquote, win, if you can actually call it winning. That's it. I mean, that's what I've seen through all these years. The best speaker ends up winning for that particular day, when every time existence of God comes into question. I mean, that's the thing about faith. You believe.
Real Trench Crusade should be deterministic or fatalistic in its intent and execution as a piece of art, and how you feel about free will. As I said,
like I said, and again, he's delving into free will, he's delving into art like we discussed earlier. So, to each his own on this one. Because like I said, when it comes into question, the better speaker usually, almost always usually wins, but without actually proving anything. It's philosophy. Like Olenna Tyrell said, it's one for the philosophers.
That's a massive conversation for another video.
It is!
But if you believe that God granted all
because it combines religion and philosophy.
Creation free will, then you must accept that the use of that free will sometimes contravenes the laws of God and how he would wish you to live. If we accept that in the Trench Crusade universe, the 10 Commandments are a thing that are divine in origin, straight from God, then you must view it as a signpost to potentially get to heaven. You are allowed to break any commandment that you wish, as long as you are willing to suffer the consequences by potentially damning yourself to hell. Break a commandment, go to hell.
Yep.
And then we can also add some layers to this. So I'm a shepherd and you take my sheep. You are guilty of theft and you die unrepentant and you go to hell. I am a shepherd and you take my sheep. You are guilty of theft, but you die repentant and you do not go to hell. Remember, being repentant.
There we go. He's based on the game mechanics, he's trying to quantify religion as to how it works. You know, you steal a sheep, but you repent, you go to heaven. You steal a sheep, you don't repent, you go to hell. You steal a sheep, you go to hell, but you steal a sheep, you go and the circle and the cycle continues actually.
Repentant means feeling genuine sorrow in the face of your sins, not just saying you're sorry. That's how it works for Christianity, at least. Another iteration of it, I'm a shepherd, you take my sheep, I kill you, and I take them back. You're a thief, I am a murderer, we both go to hell.
There we
We
go.
both repent, you feel true sorrow and I don't, because you died like a bitch. So I go to hell. You know, that, like, it's complicated, it's convoluted. Like,
yeah, it's complicated, it's convoluted, and usually the better speaker wins this argument, but it's actually quite amazing that he's trying to quantify as to how religion works in its simplest terms, which is, you know, good for everyone.
Free will is a difficult thing, and
yes,
it's one of the easiest kind of bastions of actual faith. The idea that God has given you free will and you can do what you want. And one of the things that you can do is spit
or at the very least consciousness and self-awareness.
His face. In short, the whole idea of free will ultimately allows us all to damn ourselves to hell. But it also allows us to inflict real pain on the world around us while we do. And that seems to be the major sticking point for a lot of people when it comes to Trench Crusade. It's like the world is hurting, people are dying, why does God not intervene? It doesn't take a huge amount of sense to turn around and think, oh wow, free will turned out poorly in this circumstance. God should have intervened and would have, were he really all-knowing and all-powerful. So, homie already did his bit, basically.
It's like the age-old question.
The world, and he gave us free will, and he can't be around to hold your dick every time you take a piss. It's just not his fucking job. I don't even think in any real world, I'm trying to think of any denomination of faith who thinks that it's God's job to fucking wander you down the road like a labradoodle, making sure you don't get hit by a fucking truck. I've noticed that a lot of people struggle to see things.
That's quite an interpretation, right? He gave you free will. It's not God's job to intervene. But guess what? Here's the writing on the wall. Follow it, you get to heaven. Huh. A bit oversimplified for my taste, but yeah. It sort of actually works. You know, it's not my job to I gave you all free will. Here are the rules, the writings on the wall. Here are the commandments. And then follow it. If you follow it, you go to heaven. If you don't follow it, you go to hell. All right. I mean, that's a very that's quite an oversimplified interpretation of the whole thing, but it sort of works in its own somewhat juvenile way.
Is from heaven's and potentially God's point of view when it comes to Trench Crusade, and much of the criticism of the concepts therein seem to stem from the idea that God should protect people, and would do if he was real, ignoring the fact that if God and subsequently heaven are real, then life on earth is just a blip in existence, and if you live righteously, then you're guaranteed eternal life by God's side. Human existence is absolutely nothing compared to post-human existence, and that's where I tend to see a lot of people who claim to maybe be a little bit put out at the themes of Trench Crusade completely fall apart, because they get hung up on the idea that life is hard. in the world of Trench Crusade when life is hard in real life. And if
It
life
is.
being hard in a fictional world was such a great difficulty, then life being hard in a real world would be an immense problem. And you wouldn't be on the internet fucking arguing about a game. You'd be out helping people who have very difficult lives. So the same thing applies
I
to
mean,
Trench.
there are people out there trying to help out people in war zones right now. Life could be shittier instead of just, you being here messing around the internet. You could be in the middle of a battlefield trying to survive or trying to find food right now.
Crusade. If you can't live your life with guaranteed salvation at the end in a way that gets you there, you arguably deserve damnation. If you know for a fact that God exists and you live the life of a sinner and are damned, that's on you, homie. That's how
Yeah.
it works in Trench Crusade.
Yeah, it's on you. I mean, just like in real life, that's the whole thing about free will and self-awareness, consciousness. The whole thing is on you.
Now, I do want to point out that none of this is theological debate on my part because people always get mad at me. I'm simply establishing what I assume are the basic rules of Trench Crusade in order to maintain a solid framework in which the game can actually exist. So, for the question, where is God in Trench Crusade? The answer is very simple. In the world of Trench Crusade, God is purposefully and with great intention moved off the board at this point in time. Remember, I said we would need to discuss one as product and game and art, as all three. And that's why he's off the board. I've seen a lot of theories about where he is within the world and lore of Trench Crusade, and I mostly disagree with all of them. I'm personally of the opinion that God and the
He disagrees with all of them. Like I said, the best speaker or the better speaker will win any of these debates.
highest end of the demonic power scaling, be that Lucifer or Satan or whatever it is that they wish to explore in the game, will and should remain obfuscated for as long as fucking possible, if not for the entire duration of the game's life. Why I feel that is a primary consideration is that I feel that both entities are just too powerful to really accommodate them within the lore.
Yeah, you can't actually place these ultimate beings on the board. If you guys remember, there was this issue regarding the Grey Knights who were supposedly given orders by the Emperor himself that if ever he does wake up or if ever he does get up from the throne, they have to put him back. And it set off a firestorm of a debate.
Within the game's structure, and to have them be
You just can't
really very
have ultimate end all beings, supreme beings on the board or as part of the game, because what would be the point?
To acknowledge them is to empower them. And both should remain as mysterious as possible.
Yes,
and
it
through
should.
that mystery, they can be used to impact the game in whatever way the pieces on the board see fit. So depending on your faction and subfaction, the supreme end of the applicable power scale can be benevolent or baleful. It works either way for you. They can be invested or disinterested, etc., etc. Nobody's belief system in game is undermined. If you've got a certain type of trench pilgrim who
That's
believes
art.
a certain thing, they can have all the faith in the world that that's the way it is, because the way it really is never explained to contradict them. Does that make sense? They can kind of, if you suddenly define that end of the scale to either side, then you undermine every faction with an integral belief set that doesn't perfectly align with it. It's too risky. From a narrative design point of view, from a game design point of view, you can't just take away the fun that people have by being New Antioch and playing righteously and having that vibe. You know what I mean? You can't just then turn around and go, oh, well, actually, fuck New Antioch, it's this. They have to be able to believe what New Antioch thinks. The Trench Pilgrims have to be able to believe what the Trench Pilgrims think. People want to mentally cosplay this stuff while they're having their fights. That's why battle reports are so fun and so interesting.
Yes, they are.
That's why we watch this stuff. That's why we play these games. So another thing I've seen people say is that God is potentially dead. And I don't think you can kill God in this game. I don't feel like God can be dead.
Yeah, I don't think so too. I don't think that's possible. I mean, in any scenario whatsoever, because then again, what would be the point? All these Christian factions, what would be the point? Why fight? You can't kill a supreme being like that, no. Because everyone would lose the motivation. Why bother? And well, in the real life, then again, a lot societies would collapse, civilizations would collapse. So no, I don't think it's possible.
In Trench Crusade, as it
Again,
would
one for the
remove a
philosophers.
potential end goal for the forces of hell thematically. If God is dead, what's actually driving Beelzebub and all those to seek their vengeance against him?
Yep.
Instead, we mostly need to think of God as being unknowable, being not even remotely understandable to the cast of Trench Crusade, as it were. And by proxy, it shouldn't really be understandable to us either.
No.
So
That's the whole
God
point.
within Trench Crusade needs to be unexplained and undefined. At the very least, until the developers know exactly what their end game is, and I'm not convinced that they know that.
I don't think the developers see that yet. I don't think they know that yet. It's too early to tell. Has it even left Kickstarter yet? So, can someone please put it down in the comments? Because, again, guys, it's been a struggle trying to juggle a new job, moving into a new place. Nothing has gone according to plan. Please, again, help me out with the comments as to with regards to the updates about where we are now. Because the last time I saw an update about anything, the StarCraft Zerg faction is out, has already been announced. And as far as I can tell. Right now, I'm just pulling everything I can to actually keep myself in the loop.
And I'm not convinced that they should. That's not something that they should be spending time thinking about. Is what do we potentially do with storytelling at the very end of Trench Crusade? That's not a concern right now.
Yeah.
I will also say that I've only ever spoken to the developers about the game as a game and as a product, and I've never really sat down with them and spoken about it as art, nor as some kind of philosophical treatise. I'm genuinely unsure if that's the sort of thing that they wish to get into publicly at this point, as it's basically often missing from the discussion within the broader board game and wargame landscape when it comes to how we discuss these things. People genuinely don't seem to want to talk about that kind of stuff. There's a pushback again.
No, of course, they don't want to talk about that kind of stuff because, number one, it's philosophy. It requires intellectual exercise. And the thing is, there is no end game to the whole thing. You know what? An atheist can't, clearly say, to tell a deeply religious person that, you know what, your God doesn't exist. And of course, the religious person will say, of course he does. And it's an ever-ending cycle. All right? And for that particular day, for that particular argument, only the better speaker will win. And if you can call it a win after that particular argument. So might as well just, avoid the entire conversation.
Against it. These things are a product, they're entertainment.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
And people will lose their fucking shit over a retcon of something that was written like 23 fucking years ago.
Yeah.
But you better not pretend that the game has any kind of meaningful impact on the day-to-day or is trying to say anything or do anything. It's just a game until it's not just a game. And I fear that Trench Crusade will fall into, by proxy, that kind of category and discussion space.
It might.
I guess it's really up to me, right, to push that and see if they want to have that conversation. So maybe it's on me to change that, all said and done. So
Probably.
Where the hell is God in Trench Crusade? It actually doesn't fucking matter.
No, it doesn't.
Is it a big fat mystery? Yes. Is it one worth solving? No.
It is not one worth solving, or it's one that shouldn't be solved. Because if you solve where God is in this particular universe, in this particular game, and it's game over. There's no more point.
I would say it's the least important mystery in Trench Crusade. It's the one that the game can exist forever
without actually knowing or without actually finding out.
And if you do answer it I swear.
So basically, that's our answer to their question: is that no, the developers didn't put God in the forefront. They didn't, unlike in the 40k universe where they put where in the real world, God religion is basically mostly an abstract concept. But in the 40k universe, they provided religion and God as a tangible concept. Here, they didn't. They didn't solve it, just like in the real world, which is good because it's not meant to be solved. It's a matter of faith. And again, if the developers tried to solve the question of God in this particular universe, it's game over. There's no point to it anymore.
God right now. If you do answer it, there's no way to answer it that's good. There's no way this isn't a terminus decree.
Yeah, it
If
is.
it is answered. The terminus decree in Warhammer 40k was always really cool. It was this unknown thing. It was this secret fucking weight that drove the Grey Knights forward. It was this thing that we never knew about, but it somehow made them cooler because it could have whatever shade and nuance you wanted it to have in your head. And then they explained it, and it was the dumbest fucking thing ever. And they couldn't really have explained it in a way where it wasn't going to be the dumbest thing ever. Because the entire point of the original terminus decree was to remain unexplained. I'm convinced of it.
It's
So this should be that.
That's the whole point.
Basically. Okay. That's it for this video. It has been nice to make a video. I've been super busy lately. I've been getting my ass whooped in like various games that are going to be coming out over next.
Me too, except real life has been kicking my ass, not games. I was supposed to play today, but no. Work emergency came up.
Next few weeks, so I'm assuming you're all going to enjoy them. But yeah, lots of stuff on the way. Lots of lore written by me for Westphalia on the way. 2 factions that we've worked on together as a group. Myself, Kawe from Westphalia, and Vale, who's been on the rules. So I'm really looking forward to covering those in videos, and let me know what you think. That's it. As always, like the video only if you actually like the video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the little bell if you're not, and be sure to curate your
hit like, share, and subscribe, you guys, also in this video.
Subs feed. Kick out the people you don't watch and check there for the uploads of the people that you like. Thank you so much for watching.
Bye!